The Sportsman's Alliance of Maine welcomes you to Conserving the Maine Outdoors on Legacy 1160 WSKW. Now, here are David and Mike.
Welcome to Conserving the Maine Outdoors with Dave and Mike. This is a production of the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine, and we talk about everything from woodchucks to deer and moose and everything in between. So,
definitely. Welcome
to the show. And Mike, my co-host, we always start our program out the same. What did you do in the outdoors?
Well, I had a little rut there this fall, which was such a bummer.
Rut? Couldn't see the top of your head. You were in a deep rut.
But I've recovered. I went out ice fishing last week. I've been out. My son, we got him some ski lessons. We've been skiing. Going out ice fishing tomorrow and Saturday, ice fishing and skating, more of serious fishing tomorrow, and Saturday more of a family day. So, yeah, things are looking bright.
Nice.
For me, even with the lack of ice, but it's been...
Well, you're clear of your rut. I'm now buried in the bottom of a rut. I haven't done anything in about 3 weeks.
Oh, jeez.
All I've been doing is firewood, which is kind of fun. I take the four-wheeler down with the trailer, and when it's not muddy, I take one of my 2 John Deere skidders, and I get out in the woods and do a little wood cutting. And so I did that a little bit when it was frozen, but it's been so darn warm, I haven't been able to do anything.
Yeah, man, this is not a typical. But it's good you're getting outside anyways.
Yeah, my wife said I like to play on my toys, and I have really big toys.
Yeah, the skidders are definitely big toys. Well, hey, before we get going, we got to mention this is a production of the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine. You can check out our website at sportsmansallianceofmaine.org. If you're not a member, you should be, because if it weren't for Sportsman's Alliance of Maine and our leadership with David up at the State House, things would be a heck of a lot different in Maine. And for sportsmen, it wouldn't be positive. No, so join, and there's great benefits, too. We have discounts at Cabela's that you can save more than your membership in one shopping trip.
Yeah.
So
we have a couple of special guests this morning. Back about, I don't know, it's almost a year now, when COVID, the pandemic started, we reached out to some of the fish and game clubs that we represent. Sam represents, I think now 72 or so fish and game clubs around the state, and we wanted to find out then, how the clubs were going to cope. We know, because as a nonprofit, we've been clobbered. Being able to raise money and do the programs we normally do, we've been clobbered. So we want to kind of circle back with some of those clubs and find out what's happening with them and how they're coping with the pandemic. And we have 2 guests, Woody Higgins from the Penobscot County Conservation Association, and Shawn Sage from down in southern Maine, and he's from the anyway, I'll let him introduce himself. Buxton Hollis Club, and I'll let him talk a little bit about what they're doing. They seem to be pretty active down there. So I'll start with Woody. Woody, you're on the phone. Tell us what's happening with the Penobscot County Conservation Association. How are you guys doing?
Well, right now we're pretty quiet. We basically closed the club down in late November because of the increased numbers of COVID, and right now we're not having any meetings or anything going on there. We are planning and going to have our Kids Ice Fishing Day on February 14th. That'll be basically all outside. Just use the clubhouse for bathrooms and warming up, and pretty well cooking and on the pond and in the parking lot. But we've been very fortunate, other than losing the sportsman show, the gun show in the fall, our major fundraisers. We have been able to get a very nice, sizable community grant, which is helping us financially. The sportsman show, as a lot of people know, we were up there on a Thursday morning setting up when we were shut down. But Old Town Canoe had donated us one of their brand new kayaks, the one that goes for $8 or $10,000, and they let us keep that. That was a good fundraiser for us. That put $10,000 into our finances. So that was a hell of a big help. Fortunately, our trust fund is very sizable, so our 30-odd college scholarships at University of Maine and hopefully at Unity College, we can fund those through the trust fund, and we were able to donate back in the spring of 2020 about $10,000 donation to Bryant Pond and Greenland Point, and we were just able, because of the stock market being strong, donate another $5,000 to Ron Fournier at Bryant Pond for camperships this coming summer. So we're pretty happy with all of that. We're looking financially at being strong through this tax and insurance season. We have, because of the properties we own and the taxes on those, we're going to be able to get through the 2021 tax season. Our biggest concern now is by losing the 2021 Sportsman Show and not knowing when we can open up and fully get back into our basic fundraising with the gun show in the fall and club rentals, et cetera. Our biggest concern now is coming up in not this year, but the fall, this coming year. So all in all, we're surviving. We're going to survive. We're not concerned about us disappearing. It's just going to be a struggle over the next few years to get ourselves back on our feet when we can, get back to a normal schedule of what we do and what we want to do, and not just fundraisers, but outreach to the community and et cetera.
Sure. Well, I know that your club has been very helpful, especially when I started at SAM. You folks are very supportive, and you in particular, Woody, I always remember the encouragement that you gave me as a new director, and how the club helped us out with the bear referendum and some of the other things that we do. I've always been impressed with some of your members and what you folks have done for the community. I was really hoping you would say we're not going away, and this is not going to sink us.
No, we're it's going to be, it's a tighten our belt situation. I'm sure Shawn's going to say the same. It's you guys. And I will say, just in a remark from what you said about your appreciation, well, when we first met you and saw what you were looking to do, and we really were concerned that the problems with the IF&W and SAM and et cetera, we needed new leadership and strong leadership, and you've definitely done that for us.
Well, thank you, Woody. I very much appreciate that. Do you have anything you want to ask, Woody, before we move on? You're welcome to stay on, Woody, and join the conversation with Shawn if you'd like. But is there anything you want to ask, Woody, before we move on to that?
No, I think that was
great.
Glad to hear that they're doing well, and it's really actually good to hear that they have enough money to make it through a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. You guys are doing a great job up there.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, Shawn Sage from Buxton Hollis Fish and Game, those folks they're doing a lot, and they're very supportive of the activities that we have at SAM, and they've been supportive both financially and just really an inspiration that shows us at SAM and people around the state that how effective these clubs are in their communities, the things that they do for youth, and both politically too. A lot of these clubs have just 100 members, others have 1,000 members, and when you can reach 72 clubs, you can reach a lot of people. And Shawn's been very, very supportive by acting as our Southern Maine Fish and Game Club Network contact person. He organizes meetings and whatnot. Welcome to the show, Shawn, and I don't want to steal all your thunder,
Thanks, Dave.
but welcome to the show. And you heard the discussion with Woody. How are you folks doing? And tell us a little bit about what you're up to during the COVID pandemic.
I'm sorry, Woody, but we actually had a pretty prosperous year. I am planning right now our kids' fish day we have every year. We get about 250 kids. I've moved pretty much everything to the outside. And if they go into the clubhouse, we'll control the numbers in there. I pretty much followed the governor's restrictions and just did everything that, by the book. We were able to have 3 gun shows, one in the spring, fall, and just before Christmas. They were very, very, very successful. The dealers were thrilled. I made sure everybody wore a mask, controlled the flow of how many people were at a time in the building, the contact tracing, the whole 9 yards, COVID checks, temperature check of everybody. I never really shut the club down. I mean, we can't hold our meetings. We normally have 90 people at a meeting, so we couldn't hold our regular meetings, but we did a lot of video meetings, a lot of just board of directors type meetings. but we were able to continue on with all our outdoor safety trainings. We, instead of having 40 people in a class, we break up and teach 4 classes or 10. We moved some stuff outside for classes. We helped the state. They had some classes over to Cumberland Fairgrounds before to get people for hunter safety for moose. So we went over there and helped them do that. We put on a big charity event for Aiming for Zero, which is a nonprofit that helps prevent veteran suicide and first responder suicide. And we were able to put on a big shooting event for them and auction and stuff, and we ended up raising like $20,000 for them. So
Wow.
We haven't had a bad year.
Great.
We survived.
Well-
I just was across the mindset that I wasn't going to let COVID shut my club down.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
no,
great to hear, Shawn.
I
it is.
didn't force anybody to come anytime, and I always was the first words out of my mouth: if you don't feel safe, don't come. Take care of yourself. I looked out, protect my members, protect the public, but I was still able to function as a club.
Well,
Excellent.
that's all good news, Shawn.
Yeah.
I
I can add, we did through the fall. We had 3 pistol safety classes at the club, which the income was donated to the club. They were NRA safety, beginner pistol classes. We did have our hunters breakfast, and we raised some good funds there. We did because of the low turnout for meetings with the governors. The 50 people. We were only getting 25 to 30 members showing up, and we just decided that instead of the cost of keeping the club open and the cost of everything we had to do to have the meetings, we decided to kind of step aside for a couple of months and see how things went. And of course, things have gotten worse. But we are, like I said, we're going ahead with our Kids Ice Fishing Day. We're looking at that type of stuff that we can do outside, and not typically a fundraiser. It's more of a free thing for the community to come and enjoy. So
I was going to say that the kids fishing derbies or fishing events are so awesome.
exactly.
And
And
the
in
whole
our
community
little small
sees
pond,
it.
we'll get, in the course of the 9 to 3 in the afternoon, we'll get close to 200 people on and off that little pond that we have.
Oh, yeah.
And, if they catch 30 or 40 trout, the kids just have a wonderful time. And it's kind of like Shawn said, the club's just going to be used to go in and use the bathrooms where everything is going to be outside. Masks are not required but recommended. We took the local Boy Scout Troop 1 and Brewer under our cover, I guess I'd say about 2 years ago, and they're going to come and have a fire in the fire ring and cook hot dogs on a stick with the kids just do everything outdoors. And we'll do what we can as best we can. I guess that's the way we're looking at it. And we have kept our board meetings going. We just haven't had our club member dinner meetings because of the numbers that were showing up, and just couldn't afford to do it. So,
well,
and in my case, we actually had to have some meetings like in the fall because we hadn't seen members. We had them out in the parking lot, socially distanced everybody out in the parking lot, and then when it got cold, we had to move back in and go to some video meetings and stuff. But I really couldn't close the club down because I have a bass club that meets there, an ATV club that meets there, a snowmobile club, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. I have a lot of the community that use our facilities. So.
Well, I'm glad you described this, both of you, because I think the general public has little understanding of how comprehensive these clubs are as far as teaching in their communities, being sort of a hub for outdoor activities, the experts that are there that are teaching firearm safety and the other components of being in the outdoors. They're a very valuable part of our culture, our heritage here in the state. And one reason why we want to keep in touch with you is we want to make sure we don't lose any in the the past 12 months or in the next 12 months, because I think the next 12 months are going to be the real test, because people have maximized the reserves. They've done the best they can to survive. They can't do another year. And so, anyway.
I'm very hopeful that, this will pass, and, next year especially, like for us, for Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine, our sportsman show in Augusta. I mean, that's one of our biggest fundraisers, and not to have that 2 years in a row is tough. But I'm very hopeful for the third year that we get that and put that on, because people are going to be really looking forward to it at that point. Getting back out and doing stuff, and
Amen.
you know.
It's funny you say that, Mike, about Sam, because when this first started, I called an immediate board meeting. You were there, and said we need to institute changes now to have any effect down the road. You can put in cost savings measures, but if you don't put them in early, you're only going to save a tiny amount of your money. So we did it early. We worked very hard to make sure that we skimmed it down as far as we could, but we also wanted to deliver services to our members. We still needed to do that. I am proud to say that we're doing okay, that we have not had to tap into our reserves. But my comment about the next year, we've done all we can do. And at this point, we're going to have to start cutting services if we go on another year. You just can't lose, as a nonprofit, you can't lose two seasons in which you raise the bulk of your money. Eventually, you're gonna run out of money. So let's cross our fingers, hope this vaccine is effective, hope the numbers start coming down. When the sun comes out in the spring, and that first morning, when you say, I don't have to wear my long johns, is when hope begins. Every year it seems the same to me. You go through a tough winter, but when that spring comes and that sun gets warm, and you can leave the boots and the long johns in the closet and in the closet, boy, that's when the hope seems to come around.
It is not. I think all the seasons. You know, I get so excited before Christmas for ice fishing, and this year has been just devastating. To, like, in my mind when I'm at work, I'm thinking about ice fishing, and then I look out and there's no ice.
I know. You have to go out with a canoe.
I had a picture of a boat out on the lake. I was going to think about going ice fishing.
Well, to that point, on the way over, we have our own kids' fishing pond, and I know people are limited on where they can go still, especially, over the last week. But when I went by our kids' fishing pond, there were two groups of kids out there fishing.
Good.
Didn't know either one of them, so
they started coming on our pond early this week after finally gets cold again.
Yeah. So
we have 6 to 8 inches of ice on our pond right now.
Do you have kids down there, Shawn?
Oh yeah, we on our pond, Deer Pond, we have 6 to 8 inches of ice. They've been on it since before Christmas, so they're
that's great.
Yeah,
we had that, and then we got that rain, and now it's back to that. So there were kids there, families there yesterday when I walked my dog. So it's great to see.
Well, I've contemplated putting on my hockey skates, which I haven't had on for a few years, but at 58 years old,
it's glare ice.
Good for skating.
Well, I like it when it's a little rough because I can use the excuse that I'm not skating fast because the ice is rough. But truth of the matter is, the old legs won't take it like it used to.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, we have a pond at our home, and we used to put lights at night, and the kids in the neighborhood would come up and we'd play hockey sometimes till 11 or 12 o'clock at night, get a little fire going. It was fun.
It is fun,
but
definitely.
I'm not in shape for that anymore. But anyway,
you can get back there.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I thank both of you for coming on. We'll keep in touch with you. If this drags out further, we'll see how you're doing in a few months, and hopefully, cross our fingers, the worst of this is behind us, and we can start kind of going down.
Amen. And we appreciate being able to report to you.
Yeah, great.
Hey Dave, I just wanted to make a note too to everybody. I spoke to Becky. On the 21st of February, we'll be having a statewide Zoom call. So
nice.
Be caught up.
Yeah, good. I think that's crucial right now. There's some stuff happening that the clubs need to know about, and
we're putting that out for the 21st. Becky's going to notify all the clubs.
Great.
And Dave will be on it, and we'll be able to notify everybody what's going on.
That's when, the 21st of February?
Zoom call coming February 21st, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
You guys rock.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Catch you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that concludes the first segment of Conserving the Maine Outdoors with Dave and Mike. We're going to come back in a few minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about some legislation coming down the road. The legislature's back in session, and there's some bills that concern us, and some positive bills, too. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to have our next guest, Senator Keim, who serves on the Judiciary Committee, come on and talk about some legislation we passed last year and related to the red flag national legislation. So we'll be right back.
Conserving the Maine Outdoors will be right back. Conserving the Maine Outdoors is back. Here's David Trahan.
Welcome back to Conserving the Maine Outdoors with Dave and Mike. Mike, the legislature's back in session.
Wow.
Everybody pay attention.
Definitely.
Yeah, we do.
There's good and bad at the legislature.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
You gotta work both sides.
On the national scene, the new administration's been sworn in, and we have a new president, a new Congress, and we'll try to keep our listeners up to date on what's going on there. We don't usually focus on those national issues unless something important, really comes up that we have to address. But we'll be paying attention this session, just see where the new administration's going. And
I don't see too much coming down the pipeline from the feds in regards to issues related to sportsmen.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think they're going to be focusing on, whatever their new agenda is and stuff, immigration and,
Yeah. I'll always be concerned at both state and federal level with executive orders. You never know what's coming with those. I think Massachusetts really scared people when their AG basically outlawed certain semi-automatic firearms back a few years ago. You shouldn't be legislating through an AG's office, but we'll be paying attention.
Well, we always keep track of what's going on in the feds, so
yeah.
people can be rest assured we're keeping an eye on it. But at the same time, like I said, there's nothing we can do too much about executive orders.
Well, that's right. Well, we can. We'll talk a little bit
voice
about
opposition to them.
Well, no,
you could challenge them in court, certainly.
No. Well, I'll give, for example, kind of saw ahead that there may be an effort to do a mandatory buyback program for certain firearms. We've submitted a bill through Representative Patrick Corey that would require legislative approval to use state resources to participate in a program like that.
We talked about that, yeah.
That still allows the feds to push a policy, but you have to get sign-off by Maine legislators. You're elected people. You're the people you help hold folks accountable.
Makes sense.
So anyway, we'll get to that bill. When that comes up, we'll do more extensive talk about that. There are a couple of bills coming right up. Back a couple of years ago, recognizing that our bear population was growing uncontrollably. Most people don't know it, but bears are a significant predator on deer fawns and moose calves. And in order to keep a balance, we knew we had to get ahead of the predation by bears in certain areas of the state on fawns and moose calves. So we submitted a bill to expand the amount of bears that can be taken by a hunter. Right now, current law, you can get a bear by traditional means, hounding, baiting, or trapping. You can get one bear by one of those methods. The second bear that you can get now has to be done through trapping. So what we've wanted to do is change that law, and we introduced legislation to do it, to give the commissioner the authority to allow a second bear by any means in districts in which they're growing uncontrollably. So that bill got a unanimous.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, the committee gave it a unanimous committee report. It just never made it through the process. So
because of
we
COVID
resubmitted
last
that.
year, it did pass and all that,
that's
but
right.
unfortunately, it never.
That's right. So there's an upcoming February 3rd public hearing on that bill. There's a second bill. John Martin from Eagle Lake has introduced that bill as it was amended. So Paul Davis, a senator from Piscataquis County, introduced our bill.
Our board member.
Unfortunately, it wasn't amended to the version last year. John Martin has the amended version. So one way or the other, it's a good thing that our bill, in both its versions, will be coming forward through, I think, two good sponsors.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that bill will have a pretty good day at the legislature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's a
would
good success.
suspect so. I mean, those two are both seasoned legislators.
Yeah, they're veterans.
So, in fact, I'm getting old, but if you counted up their legislative time, I bet you they've been there longer than I've been alive.
That could very
Combined.
well be. You're just a young pup. So with that, we'll have that bill heard, and
I hope they're not listening.
yeah,
Just kidding.
I think both of them are SAM members.
Oh, yeah.
I know they are.
Yeah.
So, and they understand the issues. John Martin, he was a little more savvy. He figured it out. We need the amended version in front of the legislature. So he actually submitted the amended version. It had never been made public, so nobody knew where the amended version was. It was at IF&W within their staff.
Yeah.
We're holding that. So he was smart enough. He went right to him and said, I need the amended version.
Nice.
Which I think
He's pretty savvy. Yeah.
Both gentlemen want to do
he was
the right things.
He was Speaker of the House. He's been there for. Yeah. He knows what's going on.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's good to have help from both of those
Yeah, absolutely.
folks.
There is another bill that is on our radar screen that is a serious concern to us. Representative Terrio from South China, I believe, has introduced a bill that would create a new civil trespass violation for hunting dogs when they're on private property. So if a landowner says, I don't want any hounding on my property, and your hounds end up on their property, as owners of the dogs, you can be cited for a civil trespass violation. And one of my concerns is it's almost impossible to teach dogs how to read.
Yeah, they don't respond well to no trespassing signs.
So, depending on the situation,
it's a difficult situation.
It
there's
really
no doubt.
is. It is. There's a reason he put the bill in. I'm sure that there's been problems in certain areas of the state, and obviously we want to be part of a solution. But capturing rabbit dogs and bird dogs, this is too broad.
I mean, I don't even see how it would actually even work. I mean, what is the landowner going to run out and like chase down the dog and try to capture it?
Well, I did ask some questions through the department. Is the land posted, first of all? And if it is, then yeah, you're supposed to stay off private property. But if it's not posted and you're not familiar with the landowner's desire to not have hounds, how in the world are you supposed to abide by that?
How are you going to know whose dog it is to charge? I mean, if the owner with this civil violation...
It's going to be a tough one, though.
Yeah, we actually had that when I was chair of the committee, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. We had that bill at least twice. And, I forget how they got resolved. They probably just straight ought not to pass. But
sure. Yeah.
I do think, though, we talked to the Warden Service, obviously has to be involved. And if people, especially if there's livestock involved and whatnot, people have to be respectful of that. But
it is currently against the law to allow your animals to run onto private property, run free. So domesticated animals, if your Labrador Retriever runs onto your neighbor's land and you don't want it there, if you don't get your dog out of there, then you can be charged with a civil trespass. But
especially if it's attacking, chickens and livestock.
But that's a different situation than a hunting dog. You're out there in the woods and the dog's chasing a rabbit. The rabbit does a beeline for the neighbor's property. The dog's going to chase it. I mean,
I don't think those dogs are going to go running across the property chasing a rabbit and then say, "Oh, wait a minute, there's a cow over there. I'm going to go check that out instead."
Wait a minute, I saw a posted sign back there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be difficult. And what it's going to amount to is this is going to put a huge burden on inland fisheries and wildlife wardens.
Yeah.
If they're going to be out there chasing down these landowners who maybe their issue is political too, because we have a lot of anti-hunters that own property that could really use and abuse that law. And so, I mean, how in the world are you going to prove that dog was there? And it's just going to be a mess. So we'll figure it out.
We're probably going to advocate for just a straight up ought not to pass, I imagine. Yeah. And let the wardens figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, I think sorry,
wardens.
Yeah. Well, I think we're always going to have issues like this that are controversial that come up. We need to figure out a way to keep some people happy, but if somebody has a political agenda, you're never going to make them happy.
Right.
And that is where we parse the lines. If it's a legitimate problem, let's fix it. But if you're just doing this to harass hound hunters, whether it be rabbit hunters or bird hunters or whatever, bears, coyotes, whatever it is, then I don't think we ought to be creating laws so that you can harass people politically. So that's the dividing line for us. We do know that wildlife needs to be managed. Hunting is a part of our culture and our heritage. And we don't want to do something that would wipe out an effective method to manage wildlife. And I think hounding has a role in that. So with that, there are some other things that we're looking at. We do have a Land for Maine's Future bond that we've introduced, and it's a $35 million bond over 3 years with some money for parks, infrastructure investment. The governor's office came out, or they're going to be coming out with one very similar to ours. That's good news. Anytime the governor's aligned with you, that's a good thing.
Great news, yeah.
So I think that has a decent chance.
Well, Governor, she's always been very supportive of Land for Maine's Future.
Yeah, and we have a great relationship with that administration.
Yeah.
Whether it's Judy Camuso or Tom Abello in her office or the governor herself. Always been open.
She's
to
a member of Sportsman's Alliance of Maine, actually. Yeah.
We have a lot of members that very famous people and both in-state and out-of-state. We can talk about that in a future show.
Yeah,
yeah,
it'll be fun.
So I think we'll do well with that. The piece in it that keeps us really connected to that program is trying to prioritize, and that our bond calls for it, is to protect deer wintering areas, to manage deer wintering areas, to buy them, manage them for wildlife, particularly for deer. So,
and that's not just it doesn't just help the deer, because we conserve a significant deer wintering area, but a lot of times this stream, like Cold Brook, the streams running through there, brook trout habitat get helped by all that. Just general forest management.
Well, we do need older growth trees to sustain deer over the winter, especially in areas with a heavy snow cover. So we're working very hard on some policies. I can't really speak to them yet because we have to have certain pieces come into line to announce something publicly, but I think we need a very significant investment in protecting deer wintering areas in certain parts of the state. In the certain times of the year, it's a major component of a region's economy is the white-tailed deer. And if we lose the white-tailed deer and that draw from people in and out of state, it's going to have a big impact on some rural communities. So we understand that, and we want to make sure that there's deer to hunt in that area and to just really
traditional
see too.
Sporting lodges.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole kind of, and people would be surprised. I don't know what the figure's at now, but the outdoor sporting economy was pegged at over $1 billion of economic impact at one point in time, and it's probably just higher, quite frankly, now. So
it's the problem though with that is over the years the deer, the highest percentage of deer now are in the southern part of the state.
Yeah.
So you're drawing a few people from out of state into the southern part of Maine, but it used to be that northern Maine was the destination to go white-tailed deer hunting.
Oh yeah.
And we'd love to be able to restore some of that old legacy.
It's funny, the whole issue with white-tailed deer just keep in our conversations even today because of bear predation. Now
Coyote.
they don't have
predation.
the wintering areas. So they and it's ironic too, actually, where you find the most bears, you see the least deer.
Well, it's not a coincidence. Yeah, I think you'd see them, but they might have been already processed. You put that wherever you want. But at certain times of the year in the spring, in June, bears can be a serious predator, not just on fawns, but on moose calves too.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that's true. I was told by biologists from the department that bears are as a significant predator on moose calves and fawns as coyotes. And so what we're losing to coyotes, we're losing to bears in an equal number. So
and there's more bears than what the state biologists really want anyways. So
way over 50,000, I believe.
To add an extra bear, it's at least, when needed, at the very least.
In certain areas of the state, too.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I suspect
LMF, but that's very important too.
So a lot of times hunters will say, well, there's only 5,000 or so bear hunters, so what does it matter to me? Well, if you're a deer hunter, it does matter, because your chances of deer hunter are significantly reduced when you have too many bears.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, and that comes to another point when, when like the bear referendum was up, people would ask me, I don't really hunt bear. I don't really care. I'm like, you should care. Hunters and sportsmen, we have to stick together, quite frankly, because if we're factioned, it's not going to work out. So.
Well, a little update on how the public hearing process is going to work. We finally have some indication from the legislature how what used to be traditional public hearings in the legislature is going to work this year with the pandemic. Used to be you could come in, you could give public testimony. Anyone off the street could come in and testify. It's not going to be like that this session. Everything's going to be done virtual. And I have to literally reserve an opportunity to testify at a committee. And so that's going to make it very difficult. There's some interaction that goes on between groups like ours and the legislators that can't be done virtual. When you've got an amendment that's being processed at 2 a.m, a lot of times somebody like myself is that we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can act as a sounding board to a possible amendment.
Yeah,
I'm going to get a lot of calls at 2 a.m. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, it's that's what I was just thinking. It's going to be done by phone, and
my phone's going to be ringing all the time. And what happens when it's 1:30 in the morning and somebody wants to do an amendment? They don't have my phone number. It's just going to be a circus. And so
everybody has your phone number.
Well, yeah, well, thank you, Mike. That's one of the nicest things you said to me.
His head's actually growing right now.
Yeah. All right, let's get back on track here. Well, so there'll be a kind of a convoluted legislative process this time around. Let's hope for the best. I am an optimist. I don't see it being as scary as some people think it's going to be, especially at the federal level. I think that the Senate is balanced, 50-50 right now. I don't think we're going to get to a tie vote with a vice presidential tiebreaker that often.
No, I don't think so.
It's bad process.
Yeah.
Hear me out just a little longer. It's bad process when the executive branch can decide things for the legislative branch. That's why the vice president should not be the deciding factor in the legislative branch. Remember that equal powers thing between the three branches? When we start legislating and letting the executive branch make all the final decisions, you've lost that balance of power. And that's
There's a bunch of senators, U.S. senators, I think, that are going to play key roles. You know, you've got Susan Collins, a Republican. Manchin from Virginia. He's a Democrat.
And there's a few others, too, on both sides.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
They could be key players this time around.
They will be. And, you know, they're all smart people. And I hope they see the writing on the wall that their powers are actually quite substantial, especially if they group together, because they could swing legislation either way as a group. You know, if they can get 10 of them, you know, together, they can.
That's right.
They can do a lot of good.
Well, we are going to bring this second segment of the show to a close. We have another guest I want to get to, Senator Keim. It's an important issue, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So with that, you're listening to Conserving the Maine Outdoors with Dave and Mike, a production of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. One of the more important things you can do as a person who cares about your firearm rights and sportsmen and women issues, join the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine at sportsmensallianceofmaine.org. And with that, we'll be right back.
Conserving the Maine Outdoors will be right back. Conserving the Maine Outdoors is back. Here's Mike Shaw.
Welcome back to Conserving the Maine Outdoors with David and Mike, a production of the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. You can check us out at sportsmansallianceofmaine.org. You can sign up if you're not a member. And just a thing, we do have business members too, actually. And a quick shout out to one of our newest ones, the Nor'easter Fishing Boat out of Kennebunk. New member. We've gone out with them a few times, and what a fabulous, fun trip. The captain, Mike, he's awesome. Shelley manages the other stuff, and what a team they make. And I know, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything, he's getting a new engine put in that boat right now as we speak. He steamed it
faster.
Yeah, he steamed it way up down east, and they pulled it out of the water. They're putting a new engine in there, and nothing wrong with the old one, but the new one, I guess, is substantially more horsepower. So less steaming, more fishing.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I tell you, Mike, I had a pollock, shrimp, scallop, seafood chowder over the weekend, and I had it 3 times, and usually I get sick of something after I've had it a couple of times. I still got a little left. I'm going for my 4th bowl tonight. We
went out at the in the fall, me, David, and Becky, and a few people, and we all came home with close to 20 pounds of fillets.
Yeah, that was.
And they do the filleting for you. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I did come home with a bit of a bicep problem, though. There's a lot of cranking involved when you get those big fish. But we have we have to get right into this. We only have about a 15-minute segment left, and I wanted to jump right in here. We have one of my favorite legislators on the line,
Special guest.
Oh, a special guest. Senator Keim. She's from Oxford County. I believe Senator Keim serves on Judiciary, because we've worked with her extensively. And also, I think, Government Oversight Committee and some of the listeners.
Your old committee.
Yeah, I actually worked for 7 years and sponsored the legislation that created the very committee she serves on. And I'm very proud of that. It's a good committee. And with that, welcome, Senator Keim. And we do have a specific topic we'll get to in a minute, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll get right into it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for the flattering words, one of your favorite.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
it's truth.
I feel very welcomed. Yes, and I represent northern Oxford County and 2 communities in Androscoggin, and I'm heading into, we're just beginning our session now, and so this is my 3rd term in the legislature, so things are unusual for sure in, running our sessions virtually through Zoom, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'm kind of
Challenging.
pessimist on this one. I think it's going to be tough. There's just so much human interaction that occurs in that legislative process that really is essential to.
It is essential.
Yeah. So, Senator Keim, we gave you an award at our last banquet for the work that you did on LD 1811, which was a little history. 2 years ago, Moms Demand Action, a national group that was mostly funded by Michael Bloomberg, a gun control advocate, introduced the nationwide traditional red flag legislation here in Maine. For those that are listening, that legislation in a nutshell would allow individuals to call the police and say, Mike Shaw, for instance, is showing signs of mental instability, or he's a danger to our community.
You could use a neighbor instead of me.
Oh, come on. All right. So I'll just say a neighbor, and that person's a danger to themselves or others, come get his guns. And then the police could come based on a court order and confiscate your firearms. Then basically you have to prove that you're not a danger to society. And we objected.
But that happens after, and there's no due process
Right, exactly.
in that bill. That's the problem. That's the big problem. And it only solely focused on firearms.
Right. So we strenuously objected along with a lot of other groups. We went to the governor's office, Senator Keim, and then Senator Carpenter, and said, let's work on something else. And then the governor's office appointed Derek Langhauser, who in my opinion is one of the straightest shooters I've ever met, much like Senator Keim and Carpenter. When they tell you they're going to do something, they keep their word. Well, he was just an absolute pleasure to work with. And so was Senator Keim and Carpenter. And we ended up defeating LD 1312 by Senator Millett from down in the Cape Elizabeth area. We helped defeat that. And then we worked with Senator Keim and Senator Carpenter and a whole slew of groups to introduce
the administration.
The administration. LD 1811, which was named the yellow flag law, but it really wasn't anything to do with any type of red flag. It was an enhancement and an improvement to the protective custody statute. So Senator Keim, I know that you and I were both interviewed by the Bangor Daily News recently, and we were asked what we thought of the implementation of that. It's been in place for a year. It appears it was used 13 times. I don't know how your part of that interview went, but I thought it was a fairly good interview, and the law is being used. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how you're seeing it being used and your role in this whole thing.
Yeah, so I am so grateful that your organization, as well as so many, stepped in, and you've always said you're willing to work on solutions, and I think you've shown yourself to do that all the time that I've been in the legislature. So that willingness to be open and talk about solutions really made this bill and this legislation be something that actually addresses the need. Because as you mentioned, the red flag bill only talked about firearms; it didn't talk about weapons, and so this one encapsulates that. But it also gives people the opportunity to go to law enforcement and express their concerns, and puts it in the right place. Right, law enforcement is accustomed to assessing a situation and assessing people. That's what they're trained to do. So then they're able to make decisions based on their training, and then move forward as they're trained to do. So the process is really good, so much better. Of course, the downfall to this bill and really to our system overall in Maine is that we don't have enough mental health providers. So
right.
It's great out there for people when they're in crisis to have someone intervene, and it isn't lock them up or take away all their weapons, although possibly that is an issue, but it's really to get them connected with someone that can give them care. And that's what this bill aims to do, but it doesn't address the need that we're seeing all over the state anyway, where we just don't have enough providers.
Well, you nailed it. You just like usual, you came right to the core of the issue, and that for listeners out there, that this can be a complicated issue, but we've had a protective custody statute since the 1970s, which Basically, what the statute says is that if a law enforcement officer has probable cause to believe that a person is suffering a mental health crisis, and that mental health crisis is a risk to themselves or others, can take them into protective custody for 18 hours. That's been around since the 70s. But what was happening, and what the senator just spoke to, was you bring a person into custody, they are obviously in a mental health crisis. They can only hold them for 18 hours. And if you can't get them help, you've got to either institutionalize them, put them in a hospital, lock them in a hospital, or you have to let them go.
Yeah.
And can you imagine what it feels like as an officer and an emergency room doctor, knowing you're sending somebody home that may commit suicide or do harm to others? It was horrible. So this bill tried to address that situation where you bring them into custody. They're saying, I want to do myself harm. That's when there's intervention, and you can take a person's weapons away. Senator, this was interesting, and in an interview I pointed it out, and it really reinforced what we were saying back during the red flag discussion. You can commit suicide or do harm with things other than firearms. What's interesting, of the 13 times that this law was used last year, it included things like tools, machetes, knives, and firearms. And it illustrates exactly what we were saying. If you're a threat, you're a mental health crisis and you're a threat, you can be just as much a threat with a machete as you can with a handgun. So I think that was telling. It showed me that the work that you did and Senator Carpenter was so important. Let's improve the law. Let's get people connected to some help.
The other thing that I see in our version of this sort of law is that if a neighbor or whoever sees someone that's in mental crisis, that's having a crisis, and they call the cops. In the version that we supported and ultimately passed, the police go out there, they make an assessment, and if that person's in crisis, they take them away from that, what's going on right then and there, take away the problem, and try to get them the help that they need. Right. The other version that was defeated, luckily, the police would go there, the person would be in crisis, and what are they going to do? They're going to make the matters worse by trying to take away their firearms.
Right. We saw that recently, Senator, in another state where a person had, several people had called and said this person is in trouble or in a mental health crisis, and it got to a point where finally he was shot by police because that problem wasn't addressed. Yeah. So the work that you did, Senator, was incredibly important in my opinion, because it set us on a path of getting more at the root of the problem than it is just passing some gun control legislation that Michael Bloomberg wants to promote, because I believe he really just wants to take guns away from people.
Right.
And this was a way of actually addressing the problem, and I think that's why they ended up opposing it.
I think too that Maine benefited from the fact that other states, kind of in a knee-jerk reaction to the acts of violence that were so horrific. There was an incredible amount of pressure put on legislators all over the country to do something, right? Like, make this stop because it was horrific. And then so a lot of them went down the path of the red flag bill, and we were able to pause a little bit and kind of watch what was happening and recognizing the trampling of people's constitutional rights, and then, like you said, not addressing and doing that and still not addressing the issue. So we had the luxury of holding off a little bit and seeing what other people were doing, and then really coming up with something. All brilliant minds were in it, not mine. All brilliant minds putting together some real thought. And Derek Langhauser, absolutely amazing man, great to work with, and putting together something that was just so much better. And hopefully, other states, may look at this and implement this. I don't know if they have. Do you?
Yeah, well, I can speak to that in a second, but I want to get back to Derek Langhauser.
Yeah.
I think people can get cynical and skeptical about one party or the other. Derek Langhauser was legal counsel for our current governor, Janet Mills. But I have to tell you, within just a meeting or two, he was an inspiration to me. That's how it's supposed to be done. That man, his integrity just oozed from his skin. When he told you he was going to do something, he did it. He kept his word. He was a great representative for the governor, and allowed groups like mine to let our shields down a little bit, because we're also defensive that somebody's going to do something disingenuous. With him, you learn to trust him very quickly.
He had the facts, and if he didn't, he got
terrific.
them. He was a big resource.
Yeah,
definitely.
he was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking as a legislator as well on many different topics, I could go in, talk to him, sort things through, and you're right. The ability to let your guard down and just be honest and really just say what your concerns are and recognize that no one's going to try to pull something on you, but instead try to address concerns and be fair about it. It was he enabled a lot of great work to happen in the State House at his time there.
Yeah. Well, you asked about what's happening out of state. Within weeks of that legislation passing, Senator Collins her office called me and wanted to know more about the details. I spent quite a bit of time explaining this new law to them, why it was important, why it was so much different than the red flag bill being promoted by the gun control groups. So they're very familiar with the legislation, and as you know, with this new administration, red flag's going to be on the table. I know Senator Collins will introduce this idea. I think that as we're throwing money at the COVID relief, something that needs some resources is mental health services. And it is not unique to Maine that we have these problems with individuals in crisis not getting treatment. This is, in my opinion, a third rail of our political world that people just don't want to deal with. Mental illness is a crisis across this nation. Whether it's connected to drug abuse or depression, poverty, we need to deal with it because it's at the core of some of these problems. And what I loved about this bill is it gave us an opportunity to cast aside all the political stuff and just delve into that and put it on the table, make people aware of it, and try to find solutions. So for whatever it's worth, we're running out of time. You were on the side of the angels on this one, Senator, and you did something good.
Yes.
So take that legacy with you when you leave public service.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all your work on it as well. It wouldn't have happened without you and your organization being willing to come to the table and find solutions.
Well,
thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I look forward to another session. We'll be back in touch with you soon to talk about some of the issues in front of your committee. Judiciary Committee is one of the more powerful ones in the legislature. A lot of good policy goes through there, and we'd love to have you back on to talk about some other things and what your future looks like. You have one more term after this one, and I think it's imperative that people like you remain in politics because we need good policymakers and good legislators. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay, great.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, Mike.
Wraps up this week, I guess.
Boy, this blurred by again.
Goes fast, I'll tell you. Yeah.
It does.
A couple of our sponsors we should mention. We have obviously we have great discounts at Cabela's if you're a member.
Poland Spring.
LL Bean, Waste Management, Hamlin Marine.
Terrific groups helping us.
Yeah, Waste Management you mentioned.
Yeah, I love our affiliation with the University of Maine's 4-H program.
Oh, yeah.
We do a lot with our youth programs now. So we have some great friends.
Well, we'll see you next week.
All right.
You've been listening to Conserving the Maine Outdoors with David Trahan and Mike Shaw on Legacy 1160 WSKW. Join the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine by going to sportsmansallianceofmaine.org and like us on Facebook.